Hello and welcome to the latest instalment of City Slickers. Plenty for me and John to talk about this week. We will be answering your questions in a moment. You've been getting in touch via the Lincoln City Banter Facebook page. You've been emailing us at sports@lincolnshireecho.co.uk and you've been tweeting us at Links Echo Sports. Before we answer those questions, got to come on to the key issue of the day and Chris Moyes' post-match interview after the defeat on Saturday at Bromley. And I'll just quote this, John. Chris said this: "The results will come, maybe not with me, but the results will come." You were there, John. Was that the reaction of an emotional manager following a defeat, or are his days as manager coming to an end?
It is an emotive response, okay, and that's the most important thing, because we know from Chris Moyes is that he cares, okay. I know it's a very easy thing to brand about, but you can see how much a defeat hurts him. Now, I have been at the end of games with Lincoln City managers when they've lost, and I wouldn't say that they don't care, but they've almost been a little bit dismissive because it. Don't want to throw names out, but it's different for them. For those kind of managers, it's a job. For Chris, it's very much his passion, and you know how it is when something doesn't go your way. If something you really are sort of like determined and passionate about, you will be you'll be upset. Okay, and Chris Moyes was upset, and I mean what he said there about the results come, maybe not with me, but they will come. I think that's also part of what Chris Moyes is about in terms of his role as manager. He's very realistic that he understands he may not be here for the full duration. Okay, he wants to get the job done, but he's not the sort of person to say, "Oh, I'm not going to leave," or "I'm not going to get sacked." You know, he's very much aware of how this game works, but you know, he's still striving to make sure that he can do the most that he can. And when he says at the end of that interview as well, "I'm giving 100%. I know my players are, and I know my staff are," I believe him. And I saw the match against Bromley. It didn't play out. But I will not hold back and say I don't think there was any question about the commitment of the players. They were up for it. He was up for it, and there's no question about that.
Right, let's get straight into your questions. We've got some really good questions this week. Jonathan Ricketts is first up, and this is in response to your 5 things we learnt piece that you wrote after the game with Bromley. Jonathan says, 4 wins in 22 games and a 2-0 defeat away to a promoted team. Yet the 5 things we learned was largely positive, including a comment saying it is fine to lose as there is nothing to play for. Are you letting looking forward get in the way of objective analysis of the present, John?
Okay, good question, Jonathan. I appreciate that. Now, what I like to think what I'm trying to do with these comment pieces is trying to broaden out what people know. Okay, so you know there's been 4 wins out of 22 games. You know that Bromley are newly promoted. Okay. Bromley, let's start with that point, okay? I was speaking to my brother-in-law who watches a lot of sort of Conference South football. He goes down to Sutton, he's seen the opposition and the such. And I asked him before the game when I was meeting up with him, "Richard, what's the standard like between Conference National and Conference South?" And he said it's very tight. Now, I've seen the standard between Conference North and Conference National, and you've seen that as well, Mark. Do you feel there's a bit more of a gap between those in that division? Do you feel there is a bit of a step?
I think there's a fairly decent step between Conference North and the Conference. I think it's quite unsizable. And because you've got a lot of full-time teams, the teams are fitter in the Conference, and it's a slower pace of game in Conference North, from what I've seen. Conference South, I think it's slightly bit different. I think you see more football played in Conference South because probably the pitches are generally a bit better.
Yeah, well, I don't actually want to talk about the Bromley pitch. Tackled Terry Hawkridge after 5 minutes. That aside, though, Bromley is an area as well which has got a good catchment area. You know, you're looking at London. So let's just park that for a second, okay, and think about it. Don't just dismiss a side just because they come up from a division, okay? So that's the first thing we need to really consider here. Your second point about the stats are there, and you can look at those in whatever way you like. But what I find with stats as well is you never really get the chance to put the full context into there. You look at the players that were available over that period. The 4 wins came when Chris Moyes probably had his most available players to choose on. And crucially, you had players like Jamie McCoon, who are very important in keeping those clean sheets. You only have to look at the numbers. I think Jamie McCoon was part of the defence which kept 3 clean sheets in a short space of time. So we can play about with numbers all we like. What I like to think this comment piece does is try and brings a bit more background, a bit more insight into what I've seen and the conversations that I've had, which mainly don't get probably reported within articles. and just trying to give my understanding of it. How you take that understanding, I mean, you were saying in your question, is it getting away in sort of objective analysis of the present? I don't think it is. I think in some ways to analyse the present, you need to look at the past, not just at stats, which you can just pull out. Okay, so I don't think my analysis has been skewed in any way, shape, or form. You might not like what my opinion is, and that's fine. That's football, and that's what I love about the game. You know, we are able to have these comments now. It'd be very dull if we didn't. But I don't feel they're, you know, I feel what I do is the right thing, and I'm pleased with how I put that together, and I had a lot of positive comments as well. Have we really stepped forward in the past 18 months? That's your final part. I believe we have. Really, from what I've seen since 2011 was at that point, and in many ways actually what we saw prior to 2011 in the last days of Football League, I do believe that this club has moved forward in very good strides. We might not be seeing it on the pitch just yet, but we certainly aren't going backwards, and we will be doing that for a long time.
Okay, next question is from Kevin Stowe. Can you name 5 English football clubs where there is not a decent percentage of fans that want their current manager out? In our division, plenty of Grimsby fans want Paul Hurst out, Tranmere fans want Gary Brabin out, and of course a lot of Lincoln fans, some Lincoln fans who want Chris Moyes out. And the second part of Kevin's question is, should clubs give managers a decent length of time, say 3 or 4 seasons, to build their team rather than the constant swapping and changing?
Yeah, now this is good, and I think Kevin's put a nice bit of context in here when he talks about managers wanting to go. I mean, we see it all the time, don't we? I mean, we've been reporting on this merry-go-round, and I think for us as reporters, we've probably seen over the last 15 years it accelerate and accelerate and accelerate, haven't we? You know, you think about how many managers we've sort of like seen go through our doors with Lincoln City in our time here. Okay, and I think he's right, because there's people want people out. And what I don't know about you, Mark, but I felt, and what Kevin points out here is about people saying they want people gone. What we've also seen is how you guys, like we are right now, can get in touch and talk about this decision. You used to have conversations down the pub, didn't you, post-match? Now, because you're actually publishing it out there on Twitter, Facebook, comments come in, you know, all of a sudden it starts to have a little bit more discussion. It gets a bit, it's there, people can see it. Someone who may not have overheard you saying something in the pub or wanting to speak to you in the pub about your opinion can see it there in black and white, and then they will tap onto that and start talking. And so that's what we're having, and I think that's brought out what you could probably say is a harsher focus, I feel, nowadays on the performances of not just managers but fans, and even people wanting to talk about what we do in our job as well. You know, so I think that's what's come about, and that's why we've got into this cycle. And should managers get more length of time? Yeah, I do believe that. And I feel what we've seen here is maybe a weakness, that people are not willing to sort of like be stomach, that, you know, that maybe we should stick with a person and see it through. I think that's probably been a big part of it. Maybe boards are, you know, boards of chairmen, directors or whatever, they're listening too much to people in terms of what they're saying, and maybe actually sticking with their own gut.
I think boards could be stronger at times, couldn't they?
Yeah, maybe do you feel sometimes they do get swayed? I think that sometimes can play into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's difficult because, you know, the fans have an important voice, and if the fans turn, then there's obviously a reason for that. So it depends, doesn't it? I mean, sometimes managers should get the boot when results are bad, but, you know, sometimes they do deserve more time. You've got to judge on a case-by-case merit, but I think people are a lot more impatient nowadays. They want success and they want it now.
Yeah, and I think that's a big point.
And not everyone can win, can they?
Yeah, exactly. And so what we just have to be is patient. You know, wait your chance, you work for it, hopefully it will come. You know, that's how I feel.
Right, Phil Anderson has got in touch. He's tweeted us at Lincolnshire Echo Sports. He says Chris Moyes is just the same as former and future managers. Is fighting a losing battle due to a lack of true direction at the top. John, is there a lack of direction at the top at Lincoln City?
I think for a period, and this is something that someone touched on, I read an interesting blog by one of the fans over the weekend, and he commented about how, you know, anyone who's criticised current chairman Bob Dorring is kind of almost ignoring about mistakes of the previous board, and I think that was a valid point on that one. And that's when we talk about direction. Sometimes a board will have good direction, or what they feel was good direction, but what we probably know is actually quite bad direction. They're going off in the wrong way. They're pushing too much money into it. They've not thought about what's actually the main priority. And I think that was the bad thing about what happened at Lincoln City. You had a board which were focusing on smart training grounds and elements like that, rather than thinking about,
they wasted too much money paying players off.
Well, yeah, exactly. They didn't think too much about how they were getting the structure right. The infrastructure was not right. What we've seen happen over the last few years, and this is where I feel Bob Doran and the current board deserve a lot of credit, is how they've restructured everything to work within this non-league setting, and that's been probably the biggest challenge. The direction I think is starting to come, but it's one which is very difficult to organise when you haven't got that much money coming in. And I think sometimes that will be the ultimate crux. If you haven't got the cash, you need to have a clear direction and also have the stomach to be able to stick on and go in that direction while you still can.
Next question is from Chris Bell. That's quite an interesting one. Would bringing in an experienced head alongside Chris Moyes be an option for City? Halifax had an untried manager in Darren Kelly with a vastly experienced Jim Harvey as number 2, and it didn't work. As soon as Jim Harvey took the reins after Kelly was sacked, everything changed. Could an experienced number 2 be an option, or for Moyes to move to joint manager or assistant manager with a more experienced gaffer coming in? Could you see Chris Moyes sort of stepping down to assistant manager or becoming a joint manager?
Well, it depends how you see titles. One thing that was quite interesting with Chris Moyes is when he took up the role, he was manager and he still is manager, but when you deal with Chris, you understand that he takes a very collegiate approach in terms of his sort of like coaching staff. He will listen to Grant Brown, he will listen to David Freeze, Kev Oxley when it comes to fitness as well. He'll take into all these kind of considerations. So I think, would he bring another person in? That depends. Depends what he wants to get out of it. Does he feel that there needs to be better coaching? Could he get better tactics involved? I generally feel that is down to how Chris is as a person. If I thought that Chris Moyes was not a person who didn't actually learn from what he was doing himself, then I think then maybe you do need someone to come in and teach him and take that role on. But I think Chris is actually learning through the process of how we're going in the season. And I think we generally have seen a very interesting change. I think Chris Moyes is very astute now to where he makes tactical decisions. He'll bring players on at the right point in matches. A couple of times he's looked at his midfield and thought, I need to close that down. In a couple of games he did that, brought Bradley Wood in. Against Southport, that worked perfectly at that point in the match. So that's a crucial element to it. And I think what we've seen is Chris Moyes develop as a manager over that time. I don't know how quickly Halifax got rid of Darren Kelly and turned to Jim Harvey. Maybe Darren Kelly could argue I should have had more time to work with him. Again, is that a case more about patience rather than actually being able to develop that person?
Personally, I can't see Chris Moyes has been there unless he's the manager now. Once you've been manager, it's very hard to step down.
But that's just it, isn't it? Yeah.
Next question. Dale Ricketts has emailed us at sports@lincolnshireecho.co.uk. He says, if we change managers now, have we only allowed Moyes to do half the job? He's assembled the spine of a decent squad. Shouldn't we allow him to build on that in the summer? It's the first time in our conference years that we've flirted with the playoffs, and that for me is an improvement. Let's remember this is Moyes' first full season in management at this level, and it is a rather steep learning curve.
Yes. Should we allow him to build on that summer? Yes. I do believe he needs to stay. He needs to stay because he's already been working on what players he wants to bring in. He knows what players he wants to bring in because he's had the last 12 months really to assess where his squad is. He was assessing it even before he's made his changes in the summer. There's youngsters from last season, the season before last, where he's brought through and kept with, and he sees those as a crucial part. He wants to get those players to an age where they're physically and strong enough to really actually properly make an impact within this division. Okay, so I do feel that and we need to stick with it because there has been a lot of progress made. I really do feel now if you give up, change the manager at this moment in time, then it's just absolutely pointless. As Dale has made a good point there, it's the first time in years that we've actually flirted with the playoffs. I mean, to think that we're getting upset with how this club has gone because they're falling, because of what's happened this season, it is ridiculous. They have got towards the playoffs. They've shown an intent to be up at that top half of the table. You know, in March, we were actually talking about the possibility of floods. It came crashing down, and we know that sort of like crash to earth has hurt us a lot. But at the end of the day, we climbed up there in the first place to be able to feel that pain.
Right, got one more question. Frank Best has posted a question on the Lincoln City Banter Facebook page. It's a scenario-based question. We're halfway through next season, and there's still been no progress in terms of league position. Even though the club is making progress off the pitch, do we stick or do we twist? I think Frank is asking there, if there's no progress halfway through next season, should there be a change of manager then?
I think this is a really hard one. I mean, we often play these scenarios, say, oh, I'll give him until so-and-so. I mean, I think that's rubbish. I think you can't really ever sort of like say, when is the right time to get rid of a manager? You know, you can't put a precise date on it at all. Circumstances are always awkward. You know, I think it's terrible, really, that people were complaining about the Bromley performance and saying and questioning Chris Moyes' future. When you look at what he had available to him in terms of players who were fit, players, you know, Bradley Wood was suspended for Saturday. You know, it leaves the club incredibly short. It leaves, you know, a tight squad already in a very bad position. So you're saying that we have to get rid of him now? You know, it's awkward. I don't feel there is ever a point where you say a manager has served his time just because it reaches a certain point in a year. You know, we could start off sort of like next season in a bad position. It doesn't mean they can't suddenly spur on and push towards the playoffs later on if you stick with what you've got. I think it's really hard. I mean, if you were looking out on the pitch and you were thinking the players aren't playing for the manager, that is the point. That is the point when you realise you've not made progress, because that's when things are broken. Okay, when you've still got the player playing for them, when you've still got the players playing for the manager, when the manager is still looking to think, how can I improve this squad? I can see the faults. More importantly, I can see the faults where things are going wrong in the squad, and also faults where I've made tactical mistakes or anything along those lines. You know, if the manager gets stubborn and ignorant to those, that's when you think change it. But at the moment, we've got a manager who's aware of things are not right. We've got a manager who's looking to bring in players for next season. We've got players currently playing for the manager and wanting to push on. So I don't feel that we're in a position now where we should actually be getting rid of the manager. This is a point now where we need to just bite our lip, accept the results haven't been great, get through to the summer.
I think it's fair to say that the Lincoln fans are split on the future of Moyes. Judged by the poll we've got running on our website at the moment, I think it's probably 50-50 in terms of people who support him and not supportive. Yeah,
I think it's about 50-50. Probably a lot of people still angry after the weekend. You know, like you say, you look at it in a cold heart day, you look at the numbers, lost to a team that has, you know, just been promoted, you know, the results of late, well, it's relegation form and such. But seriously, if you were watching the players and you were seeing the players determined to do what they wanted to do for the manager, then you kind of know that it's still there, it's still working. You know, hopefully it can all turn around as well. You know, you get a decent result on Saturday and all of a sudden it's all looking rosy again. It becomes very fickle. And it goes back to that earlier point. The focus is so much sharper these days on what goes up and what goes down in terms of football.
Right, that just about wraps it up for this week. As ever, thank you very much for your questions and thanks a lot for watching. We'll be back with another episode of City Slickers very soon. Cheers.
Good stuff.
It's my turn this week.
All right, sorry.